All right, continuing on from my previous video about this introduction to arrays in JavaScript. Uh, in addition to being able to know the length of an array or access an individual item to do a comparison, another thing that we could do is after it's been set the first time, we could change it. So, well, since I'm already, well, okay, let's go ahead and change this from chocolate to, well, that doesn't make much sense now, does it? Let's go ahead and copy and paste that and say after it's already been set to chocolate, let's go ahead and change it to plain. And so if I were to print this out to the screen, we could see in the console that what had originally been chocolate is now set to plain. Okay. Another nice thing about using these is I can iterate through them with a for loop. So let's do this. For, and then I count, so using Hungarian notation for those that are beginning in programming, I count is less than rgs donuts.length, and then I count plus plus. There we go. And I'm going to write out each of these donuts to the screen, console.log, and I'll write rgs donuts. And then instead of hard coding the number that appears in this offset or this index, I'm going to use this variable. So the first time I go through, it's going to be 0 up until I get to the length of 3. But it's not going to evaluate 3 because it only is going to loop while it's less than 3. So it's going to go 0, 1, 2. All right, so if I go ahead and hit save here and I come out to the other page, I see that it wrote apple fritter and then it wrote plain twice. And that's because of the way I wrote it. So it was doing a nice little thing for me in making it so it doesn't repeat. So let me go with cake donut here, and I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to hit save again. All right, so now I'm going to come back over. I should see 3 items. Okay, so if you print the same thing over and over again in the console, it puts a little number there and tells you how many times you did that thing. That's in case you do something weird like write a loop and do the same thing 1,000 times, and it won't fill up your screen. It'll just say, hey, you did that 1,000 times. Anyway, our for loop is working fantastically. So this is how we could set up an array if we were doing it statically or just writing them in one at a time. But what if we wanted to do this a little bit more dynamically and we don't know ahead of time how many we're going to have? Well, here's one way that we might do that. We could put up a prompt box that asks for how many donuts we're going to be working with today. So I'll leave my array there. It's empty at this point, and I'm going to ask then how many donuts we plan to have. So I'll say let I number of donuts equal prompt, and then I'll say how many donuts with a question mark. All right, and I also like to check my work, so I'll just do console.log to make sure I captured things correctly. And for the moment, I'm going to do a control or a control / or a command / to comment this out. And I'll hit save, and it says how many donuts, 3, and it wrote out 3. But I know that this is right now technically a string, so I'm going to further enhance this by doing parse int and then wrapping this up. The number will be the same as it prints out to the screen, but as far as the computer is concerned, it's of type number as opposed to type string at this point, which is my preference. Okay, so now that I know that, let me go ahead and loop through. I'm going to uncomment this now. And I'm thinking I'm going to use it twice, so maybe I'll just start this from scratch. So I'll say, so I was going to uncomment it, but I actually need 2 loops. So I'll say another loop, but set it up differently, where I count is less than RGS. Actually, we want the number of donuts. I number of donuts dot length, or actually it's just I number of donuts. It's not an array, it's just a whole number. And then we'll do I count plus plus. All right, so we're going to loop through this number and then add something to this array each time. Now there's two different ways that we could do this. One is we could do RGS donuts sub I count equals prompt and say enter a donut name. So that's one way we could do it. And there's another way where we could use the push function. So we'll do that second. All right, let me, to make sure this works then, let me uncomment this out by doing control// again. And how many donuts, when I hit save, it automatically ran it in the other window. So I'll say 2, and I'll say apple, and I'll say plain, and then, so it captured it, and then it printed it out to the screen. So the first two prompt boxes were happening in this for loop, and then the two things that were printed out were put here. So if I had done a much larger list, I could have said 100 the first time I answered this question, then I would have to fill out the box 100 times, and then it would print it out 100 times. But I keep my numbers low in testing just because I don't want to be sitting here all day. That would be crazy. Okay, there's another way that I could have done this. I could have just as well. I could say something like RGS donuts dot push. And although I'm not using the I count in here, the counter is still going, and it's just simply saying, hey, put whatever comes back from here as a variable as the last item on the list. So let's just demonstrate that that works. How many donuts? 3. And I'll say apple, chocolate, and plain, and it works apple, chocolate, and plain. All right, something that is kind of fun to do is to learn how to use the debugger. And so let's jump into what seems like a little bit of a different topic right now, just so that we're not just talking arrays the whole time. So if I come over here and I go over to sources and I click on this page, then wherever there's JavaScript, I can set something called a breakpoint. So if I click here, based on the way that this window is currently arranged, it shows things related to debugging down here in this window. Sometimes it shows up over here on the right-hand side of the screen. Just depends on how your window's oriented on any given day. All right, so if I go ahead and I hit refresh right now, it says how many donuts, and I'll say 3, A, B, C. Okay. I did that on the wrong line, and that's why it didn't work. Let me come down to here. All right, let me reload this again. All right, so right now you see nothing has popped up when I did it correctly. So I'll pretend like I did that on purpose. If you put a breakpoint on the HTML, it doesn't matter. So you do your breakpoints within the JavaScript itself. And what's happened is it stopped running at this line. It hasn't created anything yet. Down here, let me see if I can pull this up a little bit. It shows that there's this variable here, RGS donuts, and it's going to be equal to nothing. And then this is the step icon, so I'm going to click forward 1. All right, and nothing. Oh, sorry, what I was looking for was over here in the scope. So sorry, my window was arranged differently than I'm used to, so my eyes weren't looking in the right places. So right now, this is showing that I have I number of donuts, which is a variable that hasn't been set to anything, and I have this array which is currently empty. So if I go ahead and I click step, and I go to the next item, it says how many donuts, I say 3. Okay, now it's gone to the next line, so now we're on line 11. But look down here at the variables, where this didn't have anything set in it before, it now says 3. And if I mouse over here, over the line that's already passed, it does indicate that this is 3, or anywhere where it shows up on the screen, it shows what it's set to. And if I continue to step through my code and execute one line at a time, now it's working with this iCount variable. And if it asks for a donut name and I type in apple, then you're going to notice that this array now holds one item, which is apple. And let's keep on going forward. And now I'm going to say plain. Anyway, we see that it's growing. All right, I don't want to do any more with that right now, so I'll just, as if there were an orange donut, I'm going to finish this up, and then it's printing everything out to the console, so I'm not seeing it. But anyway, that's how I would work with that. Okay, let's take a break there, and then we'll have another array video in just a moment.